Okay, let's look at a different type of example here. We're going to actually go ahead and pass a variable value via an fs command. So let's go ahead and create an extra frame in our movie. We've got a blank movie here that's just got one frame. I'm just going to click and drag that to create a second frame. And I've got the second frame selected. And with the second frame selected, I'm going to type into my actions editor an fs command, as well as a variable incrementer. So I'm going to call my counter, and then I'm just going to use the plus incrementer to add 1 onto that, and then I'm going to go ahead and send that as an fs command. So we'll say fs command, and in the brackets where I would normally type my name, I'm going to just go ahead and type in the name of my variable, my counter. Notice I didn't use any quotation marks this time. Okay, so let's go ahead and publish this movie. We'll say File, Export Movie, put it in our Flash folder again, just like we did before. And in AutoPlay Media Studio, we'll go ahead and drag that onto the stage in an empty project. In this particular case, I'm going to drag the size down a bit because that's not so important. And I'll just go ahead and put it up here in the left-hand side of our application. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and detect that and trigger an action that's going to increment a counter on our screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a label to our screen. In this particular case, I'm going to type 0 into the text area here and press OK, and we'll center this out onto our stage. And I'm going to extend the size of it a little bit there. There we go. Now I'm going to double click our Flash object, and in the actions area, in the onFS command area, I'm going to go ahead. I don't need to detect what the fs command is in this particular case because there's only one fs command involved. So whatever I type here is going to be automatically triggered. So I'm just going to go ahead and increment a variable and go ahead, I'm just going to go ahead and pass the value of the variable that's being incremented from Flash onto our label object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut and copy this string efs command thing here, just for my purposes. And then I'm going to go ahead and use a label set text action. So actually I'm just going to go ahead and use the action wizard to do that. So in the label family we use the set text action, and we've got to name our object. In this particular case we only have one label, so it's already selected here. And in the text area here we're going to go ahead and pass the value of our fs command name. Okay? So we're just setting that to our label. Let's go ahead and preview that. We'll press F5 and let's see what happens. You can see here it's just passing that variable value directly on. It's not centering it on the stage because we didn't set it up that way, but as you can see it's passing the value of that directly onto that label object. So that's a simple way to make a counter, for example, using an fs command. Let's review what we did here. What we did was we created a 2-frame Flash movie so that it's creating a little loop here. In this particular case we've got a frame rate of 12 frames per sec, which is the default rate in Flash, so it's not moving too fast, but it's not moving too slow either. And we put in the second frame a couple of actions. One action was to increment a counter, so it's called my counter, and it's just incrementing it. So saying my counter plus plus, just to be clear, is exactly the same as saying my counter equals my counter plus 1. Okay, so I don't want to complicate it for anybody. That's the same thing. It'll work the exact same way. But I usually use the shortened operator in Flash, which is a lot quicker and easy to use, which is just plus plus. Okay, so my counter increment, and then we put in an fs command that passed the value of that variable. So remember, we didn't use quotation marks this time. If we had used quotation marks, such as this, we actually would have passed the string my counter onto our application, which is not what we wanted. We wanted to pass the value of the variable named my counter. So we didn't use quotation marks, and we just passed that via an fs command. Then we published our movie, we dragged it onto a stage in an AutoPlay Media Studio project, we set it up in the corner here where it would be invisible against our stage and not get in the way of our label object, and then in the onFS command event area we added one single action, which is a label set text action that just passed that EFS command built-in variable directly onto our label object. In this particular case that's the name of the EFS command, which in fact, as we set it up in the Flash project, was the value of that variable that's being incremented each time it hits that frame. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview that one more time just to show what effect that had, and we can see what it did was it just passed that variable number, which is always going up by 1, onto our label object. So there's a quick way to make a counter, and we're getting into some more complicated examples. Let's go ahead on to the next lesson now